up, everybody? It's Dr. Scott with the Full Body Fix, and we're going to continue our basic strength series. I want to cover bar position in the back squat, and we're going to look at both high bar and low bar real quick, but actually drill on the low bar. So first things first, make sure your J-hooks are set up properly. I have an overlooked one, but sometimes I see people really having to get super low to get underneath the bar, or they're on their tippy toes trying to get the bar out of the rack. So step one, find a good level for you. And easy way to do that is just step up to the bar. Make sure it's a little bit below your shoulders. So for me, it's right about right. Who'd have thought, my own garage gym. Okay, so when we're talking about high bar versus low bar, let me just show you that real quick. And then the big thing we're going to talk about today is wrist position in the low bar and how to do it properly.
So first up in the high bar, I'm pressing that bar right into my upper traps and wrapping the thumb around the bar. Whereas in the low bar, I'm resting the bar below the spine of the scapula into the rear delts, and I'm keeping my thumb on top of the bar, pressing the bar down into the middle of the back.
Okay, so from the side, you can see the difference between high bar, which is going to be resting on my traps, right? And you can use the thumb around and underneath here because you can still keep your wrist in a good position in the high bar. Right? See, my wrist is nice and flat. It's not all extended like that. That's what we want to see. So high bar, you can go ahead and wrap if you want, and make sure you're squeezing the bar tight. Now, when I slide down into low bar position, what you're looking for is coming down off the spine of the scapula, which is kind of the flat spot on the top of your shoulder blade, and then basically resting right on the rear delts. When you do that, if I keep my thumb around the front, it's going to force my wrist into extension no matter how tucked I keep my elbows. That's a problem. We don't want to be squatting heavy with our wrist in extension and then having to bear the load of that bar on our wrists. So what we're going to do is go suicide style, put the thumb over the top, and then lock the bar in to my back by squeezing my lats, squeezing my triceps down toward my lats and into my side. In that position, I'm locked in there tight. I can squat as much as I want, and I won't hurt my wrist. The other component to this is keeping as narrow of a width grip as you can, but still keeping no pain on the shoulder, obviously, keeping the wrist straight, no extension, and then keeping the elbows nice and neutral throughout. A lot of times what guys do when they get into that suicide over the top grip is they end up flaring the elbows at the bottom because the shoulders are tight. So let's review that low bar real quick one more time. We're going to find the traps and slide down off of the top of the shoulder blade until it rests on our rear delts. And we're going to keep the thumb over the top, keep the wrist neutral, and then keep the elbows tucked as close to possible as you can, keep nice and stable, and then throughout the squat, make sure that that elbow position doesn't change, make sure the wrist position doesn't change. So let's see the setup, and we'll show you a full squat, and we'll go from there.
Okay, here's the full squat with a little bit of weight. And you can see I'm in the low bar technique with thumb over, bar resting on the rear delts, and the elbow and wrist position, I want you to take note, is not moving even a little bit all the way throughout the squat.
And then we'll show you one with a fault so you can see the difference.
And now I'll show a couple of variations of the elbow moving in the bottom of the squat or even throughout the whole squat. So you can see there, that's a bad situation. It's going to put a lot of strain on the wrist at the bottom.
So that's the big thing. You want to keep the elbows and wrists stacked and straight throughout the whole movement.
And then the same thing I showed from the back, we're going to show from the side. A couple of good ones. In the low bar technique, elbows and wrists nice and stacked. And then here's a couple of versions of faults where you'll see my elbows kind of tuck and jive all the way around.
Now you know how to properly execute a low bar back squat. The other most common question is why? Why high bar versus low bar and which one to use? Honestly, this is going to come down to a little bit of personal preference of you and your coach, but I'll kind of cover the basics and then I'll link to a more detailed article if you really want to go in a deep dive on this. Traditionally, it's believed that the high bar is a little bit more vertical, straight up and down, keeping the torso a little bit more straight up and down, and that's going to tend to use a little bit more quad activity, or the front of the thigh, versus the low bar, which is considered a little bit more of a difficult technique because it does create a little bit more of a forward torso position, which starts engaging more posterior chain muscles like your low back, hamstrings, and it keeps tension on those muscles throughout. So you use a little bit maybe more of the hamstring reflex. At least that's the theory. For me, what I personally do is I mix them because I want a different variation in different stresses to adapt to, so that I'm not always training the same thing the same way. Because I'm not a specialist. I'm not trying to win a powerlifting competition or Olympic lifting competition. So that's kind of the way of talking about it without really giving you a solid answer. Basically, it depends, although there are some theories out there on to what the difference is in training. I'm Dr. Scott with Full Body Fix. See you next time.